tuned into Breaking the Mask of Depression with your host, Diva with Depression.
Hey everybody, I hope everyone is doing well. Welcome to Breaking the Mask of Depression with me, Diva with Depression. Happy Mental Health Awareness Month. All month, everywhere and everyone should be talking about mental health awareness, mental illness awareness, and how we can move forward and make some strides in ending the stigma of depression, ending the stigma of bipolar disorder, ending the stigma of schizophrenia, ending the stigma of mental illness, period. Because there's no way that we should be living in 2022 and people with mental illnesses still being treated the way that they are. So keep being loud, keep wearing your green. Lime green is the color for Mental Health Awareness Month, if you didn't know. So if you have something lime green, break it out and wave it around and get loud. Thank you for joining me today. Today, I'm coming to you live and direct from my truck. You guys know that I always have to update you on where I'm coming from because you just never know. But I had to bring a friend to the doctor, and I wanted to make sure that I got a podcast out to you guys today. So I said, well, let me try my first car podcast. You know, everybody else does it, so let's see how it works out. So if you hear a bird chirp or two, just enjoy it. Today we're going to talk about relationships. I always say that mental illness is one of the loneliest diseases out there because it's hard for people to recognize that, number one, that you're suffering from mental illness, and number two, they don't know how to handle it. Most people know what to do if you have a physical illness. They know how to help you. You know, they know that they can, help you walk or, go on errands for you. But when you're living with a mental illness, I believe people from the outside looking in think that everything is okay. You have all your faculties and they don't need to help you. And as you know, living with a mental illness, that is not true. Some of us are struggling. Some of us don't get out of the house. I know myself, I don't know how many times a week I get out, but it's not many. It's not every day. And, there are times when I would like somebody to drive me somewhere or someone to call and say, can I drop dinner off or, run an errand for you. Those are just examples. There are people that are more introverted than I am. There are people that have phobias, that don't like to leave their house or they don't like to be out in public or in social settings. So these are things that we can't see, but they do exist and people are struggling with them. And so when it comes to relationships, and I'm not just talking about romantic relationships, I'm talking about romantic relationships, I'm talking about friendships, I'm talking about family relationships, they all suffer. And I hate to say all because I don't want to sound like gloom and doom, but this is the case because people just don't understand what you're going through. And so, when you get diabetes or if you get heart disease, then people say, well, that's a genetic thing and, or that's a physical illness. So we know where that came from. So we can, get on board with that. But they think that mental illness is something sort of exaggerated or something kind of made up. They don't understand that mental illness can be genetic also. Mental illness is environmental also. Mental illness is it's biology, it's experiences. Trauma contributes to mental illness. Your environment, where you grow up, the neighborhood that you grow up in, the experiences that you deal with in that neighborhood, or how you grow up in that neighborhood, that affects your mental health. Your work environment, and I can tell you, yes, your work environment contributes to mental illness. So these are all factors that go into mental illness on top of genetics. Mental illness is a hereditary disease, and we have to start with that. And when we're talking to people and we're letting them know about our mental health, we need to let them know that this is something that can definitely be passed down from generation to generation. And so, it can't be ignored. Just like diabetes is passed down, so is mental illness. And so, I wrote I've written several blogs about, my relationship and the struggle with my relationship while I lived with, while living with my mental illness and while I was involved in that relationship. I also speak very candidly about my friendships, and maybe not so candidly about my family relationships as far as my mental health is concerned. But I wanted to share today that, it can get very lonely having a mental illness. I found something on mentalhealth.org that I wanted to share. It says, our survey found that 62% of people who reported being lonely often or always said that feelings of loneliness had a negative effect on their mental health. 62% said that loneliness has a negative impact on their mental health. And I wanted to start that off because I've been saying for the past, I share with you guys that I am an empty nester. But more than that, I'm an empty nester. I'm not in a relationship. So I am home by myself most of the time. And for the past 8 months to a year, the loneliness has really, really impacted me. I mean, it really has crept up on me. And, there are some days where I lay there and I'm like, this shit is crazy. Like, I don't have anybody to talk to. I don't have anybody to watch TV with. I don't have anybody to take a walk with. I don't have anybody to just be with. 90% of my time I am by myself. And, sometimes that's good and sometimes that's bad. When you're leaving a horrible relationship, of course, when you first get out of it, you're like taking those deep breaths and you're enjoying your free time. You're enjoying not having that sort of negative energy around. When your children leave the nest, you are excited that they are going out on their own. And you're excited that, you may not have to carpool anymore, and you may not have to, have those chores anymore. But after a while, it's like, well, wow, what do I do now? And I will tell you that empty nest syndrome is one of the top things that's listed on my medical report from when I was hospitalized in 2018. And I knew that it was a thing, but I didn't know that it was a thing, if you know what I'm saying. And I am going to do a separate podcast just for that, because I think that, there's also some fogginess, surrounding that. But, initially when you're by yourself, you're saying, oh, I can breathe. I don't have to cook if I don't want to. I don't have to clean if I don't want to. I can watch what I want on TV. But when that sort of creeps up, and it's 50% of the time, 90% of the time, and you're by yourself all the time, it really, really sort of sucks the life out of you. When you sit down and you think about it, like, wow, I don't have anybody, and people don't like to hear that you say that out loud because your friends and your family get offended. But the bottom line is that when you're in your house and no one else is there, you are lonely. Yes, you can meet people for coffee. Yes, you can meet people for dinner. Yes, you can go visit. But when you're home, you're by yourself, and there are loads millions and millions of people that are by themselves, elderly people that live alone, that don't have any children or don't have any friends in the area. They are by themselves. And so loneliness sort of contributes to the height of your mental illness. And I don't think that that's something that we discuss anymore, So today I'm not gonna hit you with a million Google facts, because these are things that I can talk about from experience. It's rough. It's rough, but it's even more difficult when people just don't understand what you're going through. And if you don't know what the hell you're going through, it's hard for you to explain it to people. And so it's just, it turns into a circle. It's just a never-ending circle of misunderstandings and loneliness. So the first thing that I want to start with is romantic relationships, because, we all have them, we all exist in them. And I think that when it comes to mental illness, that's something that worries a lot of people. It's something that most people talk about, the side effects of mental illness and how it affects their romantic relationships. So I will tell you that I was in a relationship for many years, forever and ever and ever. And when I first started having my symptoms and my breakdown, my partner was not very attentive. And, he wasn't attentive before to certain things, but being sick, it made it even worse. And so that means that, I was sick, and the care for my house and my children and everything fell on me. And when it came to light, what I was really struggling with, initially there's care there, initially there's concern there, but then after a while it's like, well, look, your limbs aren't broken. You can get up and you can get around and you can cook and you can do whatever. And I think that he overlooked the fact that, this was a real illness, and that, for example, I'm taking medication. So that means that I should not be driving my children around. The medication makes me tired. So I should not be, obligated to cook every night or whatever. And so, there was a lot of neglect there on his part. And he also refused to learn about what I was living with. And so that made it even more difficult. That caused a lot of animosity on my end and a lot of anger on his end. But he had the opportunity. It's not like I was hiding my illness. It's not like we were just dating. I was very upfront with what I was going through and what I was struggling with. He had the opportunity to talk to the counselors. He had the opportunity to come to the hospital and talk to the doctors, but he never took those opportunities. So he had no idea what I was really going with, and therefore ignored it. And so that caused, anger, and it caused loneliness on my part, because I couldn't share what I was going through with the person that was with me every single day. And the second thing is medications, side effects of medications. A lot of time your partner doesn't understand the side effects and the drowsiness, the nausea, the anxiety, the sexual side effects, which is a big thing, which I shared with you before. And they're still trying to operate like you're, air quotes, a normal person, and you're not, because your physical health is being affected by these medications. And so I wrote a blog called I'm sorry you're not feeling well, but can we have sex now? Because they have no idea that, they're just thinking, well, I need to, have some intimate relations. They're not thinking about the fact that your medicine is making you sick, your medicine is making you tired, your medicine is making it difficult for you to participate 100%. And so that's another area where mental illness can cause a breakdown and cause a problem. And, some partners are just not prepared for that. They feel like if they're not being intimate, then that's like 95% of the relationship, and they don't want to be bothered with that. So, to remedy that, I always share with people that you have to be honest with your partner when it comes to your mental illness. Try to include them on every decision, try to include them on information. Most therapists and psychiatrists will share information. If you're in a relationship, they will share. There's loads of information online. So just try to get your partner to be more involved in what's going on. Read the side effects when you pick up your medication. Read it together so that they are aware of, what your body is going through, and they can help you through it and be more understanding. And don't let them off the hook, guys. Don't let them off the hook, because if someone says that they're in a relationship with you and they love you and, this is forever and ever, then they have to take the forever and ever, and if they're not prepared for forever and ever, then, you go from there. But you don't need to be struggling with the mental illness and medication and side effects and all of that, and then have to deal with someone who's really not concerned about your well-being. That's just not the way it should be. And so, you have to decide when 100% is being given and when 10% is being given, and how to move forward from there. I read a quote that says, if you don't feel loved, you will feel incomplete. And mental illness already makes you feel incomplete. Your relationship should not make you feel incomplete. And so, some of the feelings that come with our relationships, and this goes across the board: romantic relationships, friendships, family. We feel insecure. We feel like we're not enough. We sort of get paranoid. We feel like, in a romantic relationship, you sort of worry about them being attracted to you because of your mental illness, or because of your not being able to participate 100%. And the list goes on and on. So these are things that you have to be vocal about. And your partner has needs, and they should be vocal about their needs, but you should also be vocal about your needs too, because that's just as important. And that's part of erasing the stigma, by coming together and working together for both of you to be healthy and move forward in a relationship. Now, when it comes to family, listen, that's a whole nother ball game. It's the family thing sort of falls into the generational trauma thing, and that all depends on the relationship that you have with your parents, that you have with your siblings, that you have with your other immediate family members. So that could be kind of rough. I don't have a great relationship with my mom and my dad. Well, I didn't. My father passed away. I didn't have a good relationship with him. I don't have a good relationship with my mother. So that, contributes to my mental illness and my mental stress. My mental illness, part of it is also genetic and hereditary. And I find that when it comes down to family members, if they wholly acknowledge your mental illness, then that means that they may have to accept that they had a part in it, or that they may be struggling with it too. And that's very, very difficult for some people to do. I do have family members, one or two, that live with, more than two, I shouldn't say that, but they live with a mental illness, depression, mainly depression, and they're very, they're not as honest as I am, not as open as I am. They're very honest about it, but they're not as open about it. But they also appreciate that I'm open about it, and open about the genetic side of it, because that opens the door to sort of recognizing what your grandparents went through, what your ancestors went through. I one family member, my uncle, who suffers and lives with depression, is very, very honest about it, and he's always been super supportive of me, and loving and caring and accepting. And for me, just having one person in my family that, and let me stop, I have more than one person, but having at least one person in the family who is wholly supportive of you makes a difference, because they sort of understand what you're going through because they're going through it, and they can sort of soften the blow with other family members, who may say, oh, well, she never comes to anything. Well, then that person can explain why I might not be there, or explain why my actions are this way or that way. So that helps. Also, me sharing my experiences, I have noticed that it has helped with younger family members who are going through things that they are not aware of. They don't know what it is, but hearing me talk about it, it's helped them to get help. So, your familiar relationships can be good and they can be bad. My brothers are very supportive, and they understand that this is real and this is what I struggle with. But I honestly believe that they have a difficult time handling the side effects, and the symptoms and what I have become. And I think that, number one, it's difficult for them to accept that. And number two, they sort of don't understand it because they don't know what, everybody's symptoms are different. So I can say that, my brothers have struggled with their bouts with mental illness, but it was totally different from what I struggle with. And, although we're siblings and we were raised in the same home, the past experiences and the past trauma have affected me completely different from how they have affected them. And so it's sort of hard to understand how that happens, but it's sort of the same as if you grow up in the same house and one person becomes a serial killer and the other person becomes a doctor and saves the world. You just don't know where it goes, but it's still hard to understand how to move through that. But they are fully supportive, and I know that they love me, and I know that they would do whatever they can to make me better. And but it's just hard. Like I say all the time, it's hard for me to explain to them what I'm going through. So I know that it's even more difficult for them to look inside and see what I'm going through. Other family members have not been so nice about it. I've been called crazy. I've been called dramatic. I've been talked about. I've been shamed, and initially those things hurt, because your family is supposed to love you unconditionally. But after the initial emotional phase left my body, I realized that some of them are broken too, and that if they have to accept what I'm going through, then there's a possibility that they're dealing with it too, and they'd rather be ugly about it than to accept the pain that they're in. And so I don't know how, I'm not, I keep saying God's not finished with me yet. I'm not a forgiving person. I'm not there yet, completely forgiving people. So, when people shit on me and they have shamed me and ridiculed me and been emotionally abusive to me, I'm not in the forgiveness stage. So, you may be different. Even though I recognize what the problem is, that doesn't mean that I have gotten to the point where I can accept it and forgive and move on. I haven't gotten there yet. So if you have those type of situations within your family, just know that there's a way for you to reconcile it without advancing to the forgiveness stage and moving on. Everything takes time, and you just have to keep rolling with the people that roll with you. Love the people that love you, accept the people that accept you, and just because they're family members, be aware that just because they're family members, they are not going to love you unconditionally and accept your illness unconditionally, and you have to be prepared for that. And the third relationship is friendships. Now, I'm an only girl, so I always say that God has blessed me with some truly amazing friends, and I'm lucky because I have made friends that have turned into sisters. And without some of those sisters, I probably wouldn't be here today. And, that's important because you need to have a support system when you are living with these illnesses. You need to feel like you belong to something because it is such a lonely situation. You want to know that you have at least one or two people in your corner. So I am actually very, very lucky. I have one that prays for me every day and, says good morning and says good evening. I have another one that says, how are you? What can I do for you today? And really, that's huge. It's a little sentence, but it's huge. And considering what I've been through in the friend department, I'm honored. When I had my breakdown at work, there were people that I never heard from again. People that I had in my home, broke bread with, started businesses with, our children were friends and our families were connected. And the day that they took me out of that job, I never heard from those people again. And that's kind of heartbreaking because I thought that they were friends, and all you had to do was just call and say, how are you? Text to say, how are you? Ask someone, how are you? I know that there are situations where people feel like they don't know what to say. But how you doing? That's it. It's simple. How are you? Or like my sister says, what can I do for you today? How can I help you? If I say that I'm not feeling well, how can I help you today? I'm going to pray that you feel better later. It's just that simple. I always tell the story of my brother's battle with cancer a couple of years ago. And he received cards, he received gifts, he received phone calls. I mean, people were falling out the woodwork, and I take nothing away from that, of course. But it was enlightening to me because it showed that this was a physical illness and it was something that people weren't afraid to acknowledge, and he had a support system. He had a visible support system, and I have been sick for years, and there are people that have never taken the time to check up on me or to send a card or, send a text, send an email. And I don't expect everybody to be like me. I mean, I'll throw a card and a cake in the mail in a minute. I don't expect people to be like that, but, just to reach out to say, how are you? I mean, people didn't even check on my kids, How are the girls doing? And so there are some things that I have gotten past, but there are some situations that still sting a little. And when I'm in a time in a space of loneliness like I am right now, and I posted this the other day, that the loneliness that I'm feeling right now is just overwhelming to me, and it's something that I've never experienced before. And so it's times like these that I sort of, those things sort of sting, because I have time to think about it, but I'm forever grateful for the people that are there for me. And I don't want you to get discouraged, because there's always one person, and like I always say, and I'm not bullshitting, when I say you got me, you got me. If you need somebody to talk to, you got me. So that means that you have at least one person in your corner. And, just hold on to those people that you do have. Love them and let them love you, and respect them and let them respect you. Now, initially, you may have to teach people how to embrace your illness, how to interact with your illness, but the true souls will stick around. The true souls will change and accommodate you. And that's what counts. The true souls are what really, really counts. So just don't give up. Hold on and embrace it. Thank you so much for listening. Thank you to Illumination Media and Technology for keeping me on track, because trying to keep this brain on track is hell. Follow them on all the social media platforms and hire them. They're one of the best in the tech business. Listen to Breaking the Mask on most podcast platforms: Apple, Podbean, iHeartRadio, Spotify. I'm probably missing Google Podcasts. Go like, share, and I'm not a numbers person. I don't even look at my numbers and followers and anything unless, somebody asks me for those numbers. I really want you to share so that information gets out, so that people know that they're not alone, so that one person can live because of what they're listening to. So please like and share with your friends and family. Head on over to divawithdepression.com, sign up, say hey. If you have any suggestions, if you have anything that you'd like me to discuss, if you have an episode that you like me, an idea for an episode, feel free. I'm always open to it, because I'm learning new things every single day, just like you are. We are in crazy times, guys. So I want you to just stay safe and stay well. Protect your soul, protect your peace, and keep fighting. Love to all.